Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We're going to start now. I want to thank you all for your patience. We had a couple of things going on. We actually came from the street name of Joe Frazier. Pretty exciting event, and people were experiencing a lot of nostalgia, and somebody started talking about black and white TVs, you know, and you could just see the people kind of shaking their heads, and then somebody was talking about the old antennas with UHF and VHS, right? People said, okay, and then Councilman O talked about the pliers that used to be on top of the TV when now the older folks, yeah, you all are telling your age, right? So, but thank you, this was interesting. So it was a historical perspective in terms of that. And to a large degree, what we're talking about today is historical. So first, I would like to thank everybody who has participated in pulling together not only today, but just for years and years of their constant support, their advocacy for equitable development, making sure that everybody had an opportunity to have a home, because having a home and having the appropriate education are probably the two most significant things, because with that, it's the building blocks of you continuing to move forward in your life. So I just want to thank you so much for that. I particularly want to thank Councilwoman Maria Quiñones Sánchez for her willingness to stimulate the conversation to a level where we actually had to do something. She introduced some legislation a little while ago, and she'll get into the specifics of that, but it kind of made people sit down and talk about what we were really going to do, and at the end of the day, everybody acknowledges that we had to do something, so I want to thank her for that. I want to thank my partner on the other side, Councilman Squilla. Our district's border, we have a similar type of district, for getting engaged on the council side and bringing another perspective to the table that afforded us an opportunity to come up with a balanced plan. And I want to thank my colleagues here who always step to the plate. This lady in the rear, Councilwoman Blackwell, has been fighting for affordable housing. Actually, you know, I was a little child when I first came here to work. She was fighting. So I want to thank all of those folks. I want to thank our friends from the industry, because the simple reality is the best plan comes when you get a real consensus and you get people sitting down and talking about the building blocks of what ultimately will be a good program, a good outcome as it relates to, because the simple reality is government can't do it alone. You got to have the private sector involved. And the private sector, I know they think they can do it alone, but every now and then it's not bad to have the government in it, right? Just from the regulatory perspective. And I want to thank the advocates who have weighed in consistently on making sure at the end of the day, after everybody got briefed. I want to thank them so much. So real quick, and then I'm going to turn it over to the Councilwoman. So there's been a lot of discussion about what this is, and you know, we had this real slick brochure. I hope everybody has one. Putting Philadelphians First. It's an awesome. Please read it, because we spent a lot of time putting it together, right? But the reality is that this isn't about an investment in the city of Philadelphia, an investment in our neighborhoods, an investment in our people, an investment in the industry, because all the dollars that are generated as a result of this particular revenue stream will be reinvested back into the industry. It will be reinvested back into our community, and will create a lot of opportunities for individuals to work, a lot of opportunities as it relates to affordables and the sustainability to have a household, and a lot of opportunities for our city to continue to grow. The reality is, you know, representing Center City and probably having the most diverse district, I think maybe the councilman's right behind me, we understand this whole issue, the concern about the tale of two cities. While we're excited, people come here and they pretty much kind of stay downtown and around the perimeter, and they think everything's great, but the reality is everything is not great in the entire city. So we hope that this will stimulate the growth in other neighborhoods, making sure as we experience that growth, it's done in an equitable way so everybody can have an opportunity to experience what we believe to be an opportunity to have a great place to live, a great neighborhood, and ultimately will lead to a great Senate. So what I'd like to do right now is to turn it over to Councilwoman Quiñones Sánchez, who will talk about some of the specifics of our program. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I also want to thank all of my colleagues who have never been shy or should we say gun shy about doing the right thing and protecting and defending the core values that I believe have been essential to Council's agenda around affordability, around accessibility, around equitable development, inclusion, and diversity. And this is one of those projects where all of those values can come together, and we can assure the residents of the city of Philadelphia that we want everybody on the same boat and everybody rising at the same time, and that we can be equitable, fair, and protect those core values around home ownership, which are hugely important and central, but at the same time preserve and redevelop where necessary in a more balanced way. And policy does matter, and when you're trying to develop policy that impacts the entire city, it's important to stimulate the debate. That's not what he said when we were meeting privately. He was like, "What the hell are you doing?" But to stimulate the debate, because that tale of two cities is there if we're not intentional and deliberate in what we're saying to people and then what we're doing. And I think the advocacy community, and I started at 15 in a community development corporation, the advocacy community has been consistent in holding our feet to the fire about doing what we say, right? And so I really want to thank them for creating the space to get us here. To the folks who participated in the work groups, some of the best minds, and Leo in particular, who I debated constantly and will continue to debate constantly, I really want to thank them, because I've had an opportunity, I abut Councilman Squilla and Council President Clarke's district. I had an opportunity to work with a lot of great developers, and Jim, the new president of the BIA, and others, and they really do want some of the same things, right? It builds value to their assets and what they're building in the community. So this is a win-win-win for everyone. And so I really want to thank Council President and Councilman Squilla, Kenyatta Johnson, and of course Janie, who's always been an advocate about helping us get here. You know, we're still going to support the mixed income goals, which is 90% of folks are getting bonuses at ZBA. And so now we can have a consistent formula about when you get a bonus, what are the community benefits that folks can get across the board. And this is that contribution into the Housing Trust Fund, or you build on site. I mean, nobody wants to see a segregated economic and racial segregation downtown. And so we have to be intentional about meeting that goal. And so the mixed income housing component of it is still a core component of it. We've gotten a lot of voluntary participation in many of our districts. Council President, myself and others, Kenyatta Johnson, have really worked with the private sector to do that. And of course, we always appreciate the advocates and the plans and the investments, because in many cases it was that public sector that created the markets that now we see growing. And so they should also be a strategic part of how we move forward. So again, this is not the end of the conversation. This does not substitute the need for a comprehensive housing strategy, and we're pleased that the administration understands that ultimately that we have to have a guiding document, and then it becomes a breathing document that we fund, support in a very intentional way. So thank you to all of my colleagues, to all of the advocates and everyone who's gotten us to here, and there's a lot of work to do. I think that people are going to be very skeptical about our ability to really fulfill that. I, on the other hand, having worked with all the folks in the work groups from all the different sectors, know that there's a lot of great people who share those values and believe that we could get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Next, we'll have our good friend Leo Addimando from the BIA. And I particularly want to thank them because they were willing to sit down and discuss an issue. And I know this has been somewhat of a challenge. I'm always going to be a straight shooter as it relates to the private sector. But Leo was willing. Jim, thank you for being able to sit down. Let's talk it out. Let's talk about succeeding with something that everybody's going to benefit. Because at the end of the day, when we figure out a way to utilize some of this revenue to do 4% tax credits, and you all in the advocates can understand how we're going to build more and more developments in the city of Philadelphia as a result. So, Leo, come up. I just want to thank you, man, for the conversation that we've had. You've really been very helpful.
Thank you, Council President Clarke, I want to thank Councilwoman Sanchez and Council President Clarke for their leadership in bringing the issue of housing affordability to the forefront and for working hard with the various constituencies to craft a balanced solution to this difficult problem. I also want to acknowledge to my right here Councilman Squilla for being here today and really for his tireless and consistent work ethic and the way he responds to his constituents' concerns, even at times when maybe the politics would suggest he should not respond to them. I also want to acknowledge Councilman Johnson, who has been part of this conversation with the development community and with me, both in matters on the ground in his district, but also in thinking about the global housing affordability problem in the city. Over the last few months, Jim Moransky, who's the president of the BIA, and myself have met with every person who's behind me at least once, in some cases 5, 6, 7 times. We arm wrestled once or twice, and we're here today because the result of all that, I think, is a good compromise for the city of Philadelphia. So I'm Leo Addimando. I'm the vice president of the BIA. For those who don't know, the BIA is a trade association of mostly residential developers working throughout Philadelphia. In addition to developers, we have other professionals who provide other services to the development community. Some of our members renovate, 2-row homes a year. Some of us, build large mixed-use buildings in the core of the city, and sort of everything in between. More recently, though, our membership has grown, and it's not just a residential development trade organization, but it's a mixed-use real estate development group that represents a pretty good cross-section of developers in the city of Philadelphia. If you go back 20 years, the BIA and its leadership at that time have been at the table working hard with mayors, council members, and other parties to craft policy that has shaped the neighborhoods of this great city. As Council President Clarke may recall, it was the BIA that marshaled some resistance to an inclusionary zoning proposal that was perhaps a decade before its time, back in 2008. But that was 10 years ago, and since then the city has flourished, or most of the city has flourished. While the redevelopment of this great metropolis is positive, it is time now to ensure the benefits of this building boom are shared by all. Last summer, when Councilwoman Sanchez introduced her mixed-income housing bill, the BIA engaged in an open-minded, thoughtful, and analytical dialogue with the Councilwoman and other parties, many of whom are here today. I personally attended numerous sessions, working group sessions organized by the Councilwoman, as did many of my colleagues at the BIA. We articulated through a thoughtful and thorough financial analysis why we thought that the mandatory nature of the inclusionary zoning bill, as first introduced, was potentially a very harmful step in the city's housing market, and how that bill, the original bill, could actually exacerbate the affordable housing problem that we have in the city. To her credit, and to the credit of everyone behind me here, City Council took a step back, listened to a lot of the opinions in the room, some in support, some not in support, and looked at all the options available. And although I may not agree, with my colleagues in the development business, or with every member of City Council, or some of the housing advocates about all the issues, we, as an industry group, acknowledge that there is a growing need for affordable housing in this city, and a growing shortage of it. The problem is getting worse, not better. So it's with all this background that I'm here today on behalf of the BIA to support the amendments to Councilwoman Sanchez's bill, which make the program, the mixed income housing program, optional and create real economic incentives for developers to build mixed income housing. We're also here in support of the accompanying legislation to create a 1% construction impact tax that will fund the development of more affordable housing for both for-profit and nonprofit developers to access. The BIA views this tax as a more equitable alternative to other proposals, which in large part solely targeted residential development and construction to bear the cost of solving a problem that is the result of a host of issues, including job loss and education. In addition, the 10-year tax abatement is one of the most critical and successful programs the city has implemented for sustaining growth. And now any resident or business owner receiving the tax abatement will be directly contributing to the development of affordable housing through this 1% tax. In all of this, the BIA's goal is to help this program, make this program a success, to ensure there is adequate time to plan its implementation, and that any project with a valid zoning application by year's end be exempted. Those are important comments that we have to the proposals. To that end, over the coming weeks, members of the BIA, myself, Jim, the president, will continue to be constructive in our engagement with City Council, with Councilwoman Sanchez and Council President Clarke and the others here, to try to accomplish the final few compromises needed to get this passed. And I thank you for your time today and for asking me to be here. And I think this is a good step for the city and for helping to alleviate this affordable housing problem that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo, and thank you, Council President and Councilwoman Sanchez. And again, I too want to thank Councilwoman Sanchez for bringing to light the need for what we see as affordability in the city of Philadelphia. And even though we clashed on the initial legislation, understanding that, it's not only in certain parts of the city, it's all over the city of Philadelphia. In my district specifically, me and Councilman Johnson see it a lot in South Philadelphia. But it's not only South Philadelphia, we have it in Fishtown and Kensington and Lower Port Richmond and other areas that are seeing this happen. And other places could say that they have great plans, inclusionary zoning, after the fact that they already blew out their area for affordability. Places like Seattle and New York are now saying they do all this. But we have an opportunity now to be ahead of the game, where we still have development that is not taking place in some areas, and now we could have this opportunity to protect it. I'm known pretty much as a development-friendly council person who sees the need of development and improvement in the districts, and understanding that we also have to look at what the residents' concerns are. And our residents are constantly badgering us about, what are we doing? We're raising taxes, our assessments are going up, and we see a lot of challenges in the city, and there's people getting a 10-year tax abatement, and it's killing us. And so now we have an opportunity to say that with this bill, we can now say the people that benefited from the tax abatement, or maybe the negative impacts of that development in the area that took advantage of the tax abatement, will now be paying in a tax. And then that money could be used. And we, Council President, have been looking at ideas of how we use that funding. Do we use that funding to help first-time home buyers be able to get a down payment, to help closing costs for first-time home buyers, so that we can now grow home ownership in the city of Philadelphia, instead of seeing what we see now as a decline in home ownership? What Philadelphia is proud of is Philadelphia is proud of our neighborhoods. This is a city of neighborhoods. And the way we have neighborhoods is by having home ownership. And I think this gives us another leg up to be able to use some of those resources that we have now through this tax to be able to say, yes, we continue to develop the city of Philadelphia, we continue to grow the city of Philadelphia, but we now can also continue to help the people who are most in need, and they're working class people of the city of Philadelphia, because they're the ones that are having a struggle, a hard time to be able to go there and buy their first home, or to be able to stay in their home. We could help them to fix their home up. And these opportunities would not be there without the development community chipping in. And I think this gives us an opportunity to do that. And I got to say, this is a true compromise. Not everybody's going away happy. Matter of fact, mostly everybody's going away mad. So that tells me that this is a true compromise. I'm getting calls on both sides that everybody's angry about this. So I think we're close to being in the right place. But I just have to say that this doesn't come without leadership. I'd like to thank Council President Clarke and Councilwoman Sanchez for being open-minded to listen to other alternatives and ideas, and knowing that this is just the first step, but this is a step in the right direction. Will it need to be modified or worked on? Absolutely, and we could do that. But knowing that now we as a community, we as a council, we as the building community could say that we're all part of a solution and not part of a problem. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rick Sauer. I'm the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations. And PACDC has been advocating for additional resources for the Philadelphia Housing Trust Fund for a number of years. So we're very grateful to Council President Clarke and Councilwoman Sanchez for identifying new resources that will allow the city to better address a range of affordable housing needs across the city. Especially given the combination of a strengthening real estate market here in Philadelphia and a dramatic reduction in resources coming from the federal government to address those needs, it's really critical that we all come together to support efforts to expand the resources to support innovative approaches to addressing our affordable housing needs here in the city. And Councilman Squilla was just speaking about the importance of having assistance to help first-time home buyers purchase their homes so low and moderate income families can build family wealth over time. That's critically important. We also believe it's really important and glad to see that there'll be new resources to support the preservation and production of affordable rental homes as well as new home ownership units. So PACDC and our nonprofit members look forward to working with City Council and the Kenney administration as this program moves forward towards implementation to finalize all the last details. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Gonzalez. I'm the president of ASE and the president of the board of directors of PACDC, the Philadelphia Association of CDCs. I'm here to testify and support the new legislation that sets out to increase resources for affordable housing initiatives for low and moderate income families in Philadelphia. There are about 70,000 Philadelphia households that are extremely low income and pay over $528 a month above and beyond to be able to pay for housing. Many cost-burdened families are one crisis away from becoming homeless. The families that we serve are no different than other families all around the city of Philadelphia. They work hard, sometimes they work 2 jobs, and they want a safe and decent, affordable housing for their families. In essence, they want their American dream. As with most community development corporations, we have a pipeline of projects for rental and homeownership housing development that are on hold due to lack of funding. These challenges limit our ability to have consistent production of new units, develop new initiatives to serve the growing needs of our residents, and diversify income mix in our neighborhoods. Now that our housing development market is booming in the downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods, it's time for all developers to invest in our communities to help increase affordable homeownership and rental options benefiting low and moderate income households. The Mixed Income Affordability Subcommittee has been working with developers, key administrative staff, and other stakeholders in the affordable housing field to develop policies that address shortage of affordable rental and homeownership housing options in our neighborhoods. And I am committed to working with City Council and the Kenney administration in the development and implementation of legislation that generates new resources that are flexible, increases affordable homeownership housing opportunities, and supports mixed income communities and the city of Philadelphia, and also creates real meaningful opportunities for joint ventures opportunities with for-profit developers. I thank Council President Clarke and Councilwoman Quiñones Sánchez for their leadership in this effort, and we're so excited and looking forward to see what comes out and how we can make Philadelphia great for all families. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all very much. Goodbye. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Well, you know, we like to think that, you know, I'm glad you asked that question because, as you know, as with Councilman Johnson and Councilman Squilla and myself, we probably represent the districts that you're seeing the most level of development and probably raising the most significant level of concern. And as we talk to people about the quote-unquote the gentrification word, the simple reality is when you talk to people in some of these neighborhoods, they actually are not necessarily upset about the fact that there's a lot of new market rate, but a part of the problem is that they don't see anything that's available for them or their families. So when you talk about an equitable development strategy, you know, say, okay, that's nice, there's a new house over there, but I'd love for my daughter to continue to live in this neighborhood when she gets a job and grows up, but there's no product. So if we can develop product, like Councilman Squilla was talking about, this whole down payment assistance issue, you have no idea how important that is when people come to the table, they can pay the mortgage, right? Because it's like, you know, mortgage is like $1,000, $1,100 for a decent house, right? But they don't have that down payment. So being able to have a down payment assistance initiative to be able to have a lease purchase program that is going to be a part, and we're going to roll out some of the details as we go. People are able to start a process and work towards eventually owning that home. It's just critically important. So, well, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to live in a nice neighborhood like Point Breeze, right? To live in a nice neighborhood like Society Hill, to live in a nice neighborhood like Francisville and Brewerytown. That's what we're seeking, and we think at the end of the day, it will be of benefit to all of us, advocates, elected officials, community people, the industry, because that's more work for them, and at the end of the day, more people to pay real estate taxes, and we all love that, right? All right. Yes. Well, as you know, I don't ever talk about when anything's going to pass. It's just the history until it's ready to pass. It's just the way I am, because the simple reality is, there needs to be some additional conversation. And I want to, by the way, I want to thank Ann for Doolin, who couldn't be here today from the administration's office. I don't want people to think that we were working on this without the participation of the administration. Ann Doolin is the director of the Office of Planning and Development. So as we sit down and we talk about issues, and we actually had a meeting yesterday among some colleagues, and people wanted to do a lot more with the money, but at some point it's going to be a finite amount of money, and we need to talk about. We had to talk to some of the members because there's some concerns about some people who may not be here, right? Because some people say, well, I talked to one construction person, head of one of the building trades union, and they actually thought this money was going for schools. So we got to make sure everybody understands what we're here, everybody understands what we're going to do. So there will be some significant debate, because at the end of the day, once we implement this, everybody has to be on the same page so we can move forward. All right, so it's going to take, in other words, short version, it's going to take a little time before we get to a point where we pass the bill.
Mr. President, would you please explain exactly how this is going to work in short and how you think it will succeed?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Please explain exactly what it is you're talking about in this sweeping bill, and why you think it's going to succeed. I'm thinking that,
So,
question is, the average person at home, we got to understand,
yeah. Baseball, football, basketball right now, because 76ers are rocking and rolling. But I'm just saying, when you look at the realities of who's standing here today, and some members just weren't available, and you look at the realities when we have the industry, people who build for a living and understand the development world, we have the advocates who have been involved in this for so long. I don't know why this wouldn't work. I'm the glass half full kind of. I'm saying it's going to work. I'm just, glass half full guy. I mean, I just genuinely believe this is something that's been discussed for a long, long time. And I don't think you can point to anybody who doesn't acknowledge that there's a need for affordable, for sale, rental housing in the city of Philadelphia, because the numbers will reflect that. So the issue is, how do you achieve that goal? And we think we have a significant plan to move towards achieving that goal. All right. All right, I'll give you the short end. The availability of money. The availability of more money. Because with most things, that you do outside of the norm, you need a little more revenue. So our ability to have more revenue coming into this program clearly puts us in a position that we will be able to be successful. But the thing, unlike some other things, this money gets generated back and it goes right back into the industry. Our individuals in the real estate world, I would think they would love this, because now they're going to be able to close more deals as it relates to selling existing homes or new homes. Our individuals in the building trades, at the end of the day, if we do tax credit deals as a result of this, 4%, 9%, it's going to be built with prevailing wages, right, / union. Right? So I think the benefits associated with all of these programs, this issue about the existing trust fund, where there was some concerns about the availability of some of that money for people who were not necessarily in the nonprofit sector. This will open up a little more of an opportunity where a nonprofit entity can form a joint venture participation with a for-profit and open up the ability for more people. This gives us a little more flexibility to be able to address today's concerns. So I don't see why this won't work. I'm just, let me spread, hold on, let me spread it around.
Really quickly, when will the first set of bills be introduced?
Councilwoman, council people,
When might we see the first?
are we ready to roll?
We're ready.
All right.
Then, are we looking at the same parameters in terms of 10%, for the housing bonus? In terms of 10%, if there are 9 units or more?
Yes, so it's the same bill that that was on the table, more codified, citywide, and includes some other additional zoning designations. It's really important for folks to know 90+% of these bonuses get approved at zoning all the time. So what we're doing is standardizing it. We are imploring the private sector to do that inclusionary housing and really put affordability on site, but we also want them to contribute into the development of new sites.
And while you're up there, do you have any deals on what kind of housing would be built through the housing trust and where? I know that was.
I think, again, we want an equitable development strategy as we build out from Center City, right? Some of us have some goals around what downtown should look like, but also as you build out, this concern about affordability, accessibility, I think it could be more thoughtful in that approach, right? I think where we've done mixed income housing, again, there have been developers who have been doing this on a voluntary basis. There have been CDCs who've done very good public-private partnerships, right? So we want to scale that up because the talent is there. Clearly looking at innovative models, right? Because the development has changed. And so what that looks like, Councilwoman Blackwell and I are doing TOD legislation and looking at where you want to have, intentional density that ties into affordability. So it's, again, like Council President said, you need the resources to be innovative. And I think that everyone is at a stage. There's capacity in our public partners and there's capacity in our private partners. And now we have to provide and facilitate the resources to make those deals work.
Yes. That's not a part of this discussion. This is not a part of that discussion. Yeah, I didn't. Should I say that? Yeah. Councilman, you want to talk? Go ahead.
I think there's a study being done about the 10-year tax abatement now, too, so I think everybody should wait till the study's done before any questions would be brought up about the abatement.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay, good question. So there were some issues raised with respects to the implementation, i.e., when you start applying the tax. That's still being a part of the discussion. There was a start date in the legislation that may change because you want to make sure that a particular developer who has already started the process doesn't get caught in the middle after having scaled and determined the costs associated with that, if there's an additional cost associated with the implementation of the impact tax. So we're still looking at the start date, but right now, July 1 is the start date in the existing legislation. But as we say, as we work through this, we will continue to have those conversations. What we don't want to do is create a problem for somebody that's, close to the finish line, right, with a project after having done the fiscal analysis of it. And then as a result of something like this, all of a sudden, oh man, I'm falling a little short. So there will be some conversation. We'll ultimately get to a point where we have a start date. Yeah. Four bills. Yeah. 3. I'm sorry, this gentleman right here. I'm sorry.
Actually, that kind of raises me because the impression I get is that you're close enough to having this whole package complete that you're confident that it'll go through. But you say there are a few details, and there's no devil's in the detail. Are the differences remaining to be hashed out small enough that you think that fourth bill defines it?
Yeah, we anticipated having all 4 bills introduced soon. When you do legislation, and I mean,
When it's being amended, I mean, it's just,
yeah,
it's all gonna be on the table.
yeah, at the end of the day, you know, it's rare that you have something that's meaningful, right? That you can actually introduce, no discussion, and it passes in 2 weeks. That's rarely happened. But at the end of the day, when you have the consensus of people, all in aspects of what we're trying to do here, agreeing that something has to be done, then it's time to move forward. I think we put together a good group of people to start that process, to start that debate, and hopefully we'll be able to stand here at some point soon and say we're ready to roll. Yes. Yeah.
I just thought of one more. Since the 1% is based on proposed construction costs, is there any deterrent, or is there anything baked into this to make sure developers are honest about what they expect their construction costs?
They told me they're always honest. So initially there was a question about what the tax/fee would be. There was a conversation about a per square foot cost, but there were some concerns that if you do per square foot, that if you build something in a particular neighborhood, say Center City, your ability to sell it at a much higher rate would create obviously a disparity in terms of somebody build something in North Philly, that you can't sell it at that high value. So we wanted to make it an equitable approach to that particular fee/tax. So we went with the percent, and developers will understand, and Leo can speak better to this, that they indicate what the projected cost of construction will be, and it will be based off that. So what we did, we pulled like the last 10 years of permits and the dollars associated with those 10 years, and we kind of averaged it out in terms of what we thought would be a reasonable approach. I will say that those fees/taxes, and I keep saying it like that, will be less than 1 year's tax abatement. And in most cases, probably maybe close to half of 1 year's tax abatement. So we're not talking about something that's going to be extremely onerous on a particular development.
Do you anticipate they'll be honest?
I mean,
They want the abatement.
you guys honest? You guys are always honest.
Bill has audit rights.
All right, see, all right, audit rights. No, I mean, you know, people, people, they're going to give a construction cost, and it's, I mean, will somebody fudge the numbers? I don't know, but, we're working with people that we know and we trust and we feel comfortable working with, and we anticipate that people will be on the up and up on this. Yes. Tomorrow. Yes. Mm-hmm. If you say so, I mean. No, I mean, we did something recently. We did the preservation initiative, and it was a conversation with the GPAR, Realtors Association, where we did a 0.1% increase in the real estate transfer tax. And there were some concerns about, early on what was going to happen. The reality is we were able to put $60 million on the table, and as we speak, we've literally probably put basic systems in more than 1,000 units of housing in the city of Philadelphia. And not only did it extend the life of that house, it is a significant number of small contractors have had an opportunity to get contracts, get jobs, and they're paying taxes into the city's coffers. I don't want to give a number, but, every time you give a number, people will be waiting for you not to reach the number. I figured that out once. I said we're going to create, but Emily, I said 10,000 jobs at the last inauguration, so we're not quite there yet, so I'm not going to throw out a number. But we're talking about the possibility of a significant level of opportunity, particularly as it relates to home ownership, because now that we have the ability to do these closing costs, it's going to create a lot of product and make sure that we get people in homes and create the level of stability that we like to see in all of our communities. Good? Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you all very much. Thank you all.
Everybody doesn't know what it is. Everybody knows they want to be part of it.